Well, if you have been following video game news this past week, you might have caught wind of a game that was on Steam up until it was pulled this past Saturday, No Mercy. No, not the N64 wrestling game, but rather a controversial adult-oriented game that depicts you as a male who, according to what the Steam storefront description said, quote, No Mercy is a 3D choice-driven adult visual novel with a huge focus on incest and male domination. After your mother's affair shatters your family, you take on a new role, not to fix what's broken, but to claim her for yourself, unveil her deepest secrets, subdue her, and make all women yours. The storefront now no longer lists this game, and the people responsible for who made the decision differs depending on who you talk to, as some people think that the developer and publisher of the game, Xerac Games, made the decision and posted a statement about their decision. However, there seems to be no record of this statement, and if anyone knows of the link to where I can find this, let me know, as every link I've seen that would take me to the statement has been broken. However, an ex-post some have quoted was this one from Coralie Allison that states, "We did it, the game is gone globally from Steam." Allison, when you go on to a bio on X, shows that she is the movement operation manager of an Australian conservative feminist group, at least I think it's Australian, called Collective Shout, who were the group responsible for the campaign. For all the disagreement about who actually pulled the game, no one is in disagreement about who sparked the campaign itself to get game pulled. And I wanted to go into detail about the GRIFT because if we are indeed exposing the GRIFT, as much as I despise the overuse of that word anymore, the GRIFT is not coming from YouTubers like a Tory or Critical Drinker, but rather a group that thinks that they are the moral majority and have the right to make decisions for you or for any of us. Collective Shout was founded by a woman by the name of Melinda Tankard-Rice, who identified herself as, get this, a pro-life feminist, an oxymoron in of itself. However, she became more well known when she began writing. She is an author of several books about subjects such as the following, about the sexualization of children in the 2000s that, according to a 2012 article by the Sydney Morning Herald, she found her calling, telling them, quote, I think people have been feeling an unease about the issue, but haven't been able to join all the dots. When Getting Real came out, people were able to name the disease they felt, the pornification of culture, little girls being too sexy too soon, children being pressured to look and act much older than they actually were. Although there is no immediate articles stating controversies of wrongdoing like there have been with people like Jerry Falwell and Donald Willman, there are times in which an organization took action when many people wish they did not. In a 2015 article in the Daily Telegraph, writer Susie O'Brien mentioned an Australian softcore porn magazine, Zoo Weekly, yeah, I had to make sure it wasn't something about animals myself at first too, and how Collective Shout, in a move to try to prove that two bookstores were selling a magazine to underage children without a care, sent two boys, ages of 10 and 12, in what could be seen as an undercover sting operation. When O'Brien questioned Rice's organization on then Twitter, they made a response saying, quote, both boys were supported and supervised by their mothers in this action. Their mothers educated them on issues relating to sexual objectification and respect for women and girls in an ongoing, age-appropriate way. The boys were keen to contribute to the campaign by showing that Coles and Woolworths are indeed willing to sell pornography to boys just like them. They boys are well aware of these issues and they are confronted with them daily in a variety of ways. They are to be congratulated on their bravery. They want Coles and Woolworths to stop selling pornography to their friends. In other words, the boys were solicited by their mothers to pull this off, and the two wouldn't have cared if they weren't asked to pick up the magazine specifically and were told what to look for. And then Collective Shout turned around and said what they did about the two bookstores. Talk about self-fulfilling prophecy. I'll give you the link to the articles in the description below this video. Also, a blog post in another site mentions of the group's attempts to get what they see as clothing that sexualizes women and girls off store shelves, challenging the notion they are, as the article says, not they claim targeting women and girls who wear the clothes, rather they are attacking the retailers who sell them. I suppose they are slutty retailer shaming. Now keep in mind these are just two of the many campaigns, both in the past and present, that this group has been involved in. But it is clear that Rice, while sometimes the heart is in the right place, no one wants to see children be exploited in any sort of way, the methods and targets are sometimes either not worth worth pursuing, or their opinions about the targets and their interpretations of such are severely flawed. No one's going to defend the actions of people like Andrew Tate and Kanye West, two other targets of their scorn, but at the same time, if you are to champion anti-censorship, defending the seemingly undefendable's right to say such things is just as important. For the record, I had and have no interest to play No Mercy. The idea of its premise doesn't appeal to me. I assume someone somewhere is turned on by the aspect of taking the role of a man who feels wronged and instead of doing the right thing, chooses the most abhorrent path possible. But it isn't for me. But there is something about how I choose to vote to not play it with my wallet. I choose to not buy it and then move on with my life. But here's the other thing about this campaign to get the game pulled. If I didn't hear about the campaign, I would not have known the game even existed. And I can imagine that's the same for a good number of people that saw this campaign and cringed. Outside of this being the same as when the silly censorship of Sonic Generations came to light, no one was talking about No Mercy before this group decided they needed to have their way. The Streisand effect is in full effect here. What is more laughable, however, is Collective Shout's response to the outcry of gamers and pundits alike to this news, because it's as tone deaf as you can get. Outside of sounding like shameless plugs for their own group and showing off their accomplishments and their moral standings, it paints a picture and a stereotype of what they believe about men, and it is just as misogynistic as it is backwards on their facts. For instance, a question raised about games with sexual violence against men in them is met with a deflection of whataboutism meant to shut down important conversations, saying that they do condemn sexual violence toward all genders, though the specific game is male on female, thus the focus was on that. However, the organization specifically targets media in which they deem problematic against women specifically, and I struggle to find a campaign of theirs, one lots are ongoing, that targets a piece of media that glorifies, through their definitions, sexual violence against men, especially by women, which indeed happens through gaslighting and emotional manipulation to get what they want. Just ask Johnny Depp if that is true. Collective Shout says they target media equally, but they've yet to really show or prove that they do so. Another heading mentions the claim of sexual violence is entertainment. Now I'll get to the major issue I had with this and another heading in a moment. However, they do provide a few screenshots of some Steam comments, and the screenshots they provide, they seem to just assume were from male gamers and went with it. There's no indication anywhere in the screenshots that those came from male consumers. The screen caps could have had the screen names censored or the names and genders somewhere else on the same site, but from the screen caps themselves, there's no way to tell. Thus, it is possible those comments actually came from women. Moreover, are we not able to verify the validity of the statements they posted on those thanking Collective Shout for the campaign? We have to go on their word that those accounts were valid and not solicited or fabricated. And before you try to say that I'm doubting victims' testimonies as a whole, remember who this organization is. They are trying to sell you the need for their intervention, just as the moral majority or the AFA did, and they have exaggerated the problems they thought were problems in the past. It's not out of the realm of possibility that Collective Shout has done the same here, and to create the need for them, they need to show the problem exists, no matter if they are telling you the truth or not about people wanting their help. That goes with all the posts they were showing of those they more or less took out of context, just as other religious right groups have done in the past. And yes, I am classifying Collective Shout as the Australian equivalent of the state's religious right. Rice would fit right in with the James Dobsons or the Donald Willmans or the Jerry Falwells of the world. Along with some other fallacies such as this one you can see on the screen, I'm not going to repeat it. A simple Google search about what sexual roleplay is will show you how wrong this is. The main issue with this response to the responses is in the previous heading of violence is entertainment and in the notion that it's just a game and they are just pixels on the screen. In response, the same type of reasoning we saw in the 90s, which the claim was that video game violence, such as that seen in Night Trap and Mortal Kombat and in the Grand Theft Auto franchise in the aughts, translated to real world violence because the player became desensitized to it through the game. This has little basis in reality and is as if Collective Shout hired Jack Thompson and Anita Sarkeesian as their legal counsel before writing this. There are studies that link games to aggression, but gamers are playing something that has a competitive edge to it. Saying that would be the same as saying that football players grow a competitive and gamesmanship part of themselves before going out to play on the field. You're going to see the desire to win in everyone that takes up something that involves a challenge for someone to overcome. That's human nature. There's no way you can change that. However, this is the adage that correlates correlation equals causation. There's no underlying proof that games cause a change in behavior to where someone would want to commit violence in real life. And yes, sexual assault is a form of violence, thus it can count with those aforementioned games. Unless Collective Shout can point to raw data to back up the gaslights, then they cannot safely claim that playing a game which someone commits such acts, whether they feel it's glorification or not, will lead to that person believing that they are allowed to commit the same act on a real woman or even condone such behavior in real life. And yes, I was alive during the days of the debates around Night Trap, Mortal Kombat, and saw the genesis of the entertainment software rating boards, to which these groups seem to forget that we have since they don't bother noticing them when they launch these types of campaigns. And yes, I also know who Tipagora is, and also know what a group called the Parents Television Council and its head Albert Roselle is. Don't doubt the person you would be arguing with if you want to debate me about the subject. In the words of farmers, I know a thing or two because I've seen a thing or two. In fact, as I would argue with another game with a similar presence, Rapeplay, which I believe Collective Shout also campaigned against, I would rather someone with that vice commit the act on pixels instead of real life. Many people do in fact take out their frustrations and anger on those pixels so they don't commit the acts in real life. It is an escape mechanism for many. This is also why you have seen those people saying to not insert ham-fisted, heavy-handed, and preachy messaging in games that blatantly reference current year politics like what they saw with Dustborn, even when they are fine with subtle undertones like what they see out of GTA or Metal Gear games. Yes, there's a difference in the two. And yeah, I mentioned the game Dustborn again, what of it? And thus, you see the real crime of Collective Shout. There's no such thing as sex-positive feminism in their minds, just as we see in those on the extreme left that believe similar things for much different reasons. They both believe that men as a whole cannot control themselves, that they cannot even once be attracted to a female without feeling the need to force themselves onto them, and only see women as property. They are incapable of emotional connections and showing purity to those emotions according to them. More so, they are trying to use this debate about sexualization of video games as a way to reinstate the idea that violence in games causes violence in real life. They seem to have lost on that front, so they are trying to prey on rape victims and exploit them for this purpose. It's blasphemy at best and absolutely disgusting at worst. But I do have one objection Collective Shout didn't go into as much as they think they did in the freedom of expression answer. What about my right to choose what I can and cannot consume? The right of the consumer to make the choice of what they spend their money on. I may not want to buy a game like this. However, I would defend someone's right to play the game because to interfere with that is for me interfering with their right as a consumer to, well, consume the type of content that they deem worthy of their time, even if I feel like the content is not worthy of my own time. As a left-leaning libertarian, yes, that combination exists as I've learned a year or so ago, I feel like as long as that person does not interfere with someone else's right, and yes, that right includes the right to be safe from someone else's unwarranted advances, male or female, who am I to prevent them from consuming a product like that? And yes, women do sometimes partake in some rather dubious vices of their own, even when someone deems those vices abhorrent or gross. What Collective Shout demanded and got is not the way, and only took away someone's ability to choose for themselves, and in doing so, made more people aware that the game existed, which devalued their own cause to begin with, and reignited a debate that we believed was settled, that should still be settled. Perhaps Rice should show all of us some mercy, and not get involved in things she knows nothing about. But what did you think about this? Please leave a comment down below. Please subscribe and ring the bell. It helps me out in the YouTube algorithm, because YouTube is YouTube. And also, please be kind to yourself and to each other and be mindful of your mental health. That's always important no matter what it is. Until next time, stay safe, and as always, to be continued.